Dixie here. Today I want to tell you why I think everybody, and I mean everybody, should go backpacking for 3 weeks. I really want everybody in the world to go on a thru hike, but I understand that it's not feasible for most people to step aside from life's responsibilities for a 3 to 6 month period, depending on the type of thru hike you go on. Also, I know somebody's going to point it out. Yes, I realize that if literally every person in the world tomorrow decided to go on a thru hike, that it would be very detrimental to the trails and other natural places. But this is my dream world. So in my imaginary dream world, I do wish that everybody could escape for that type of experience. So I was thinking to myself, what is a more reasonable amount of time that I think somebody could step away and go on a backpacking adventure and still gain maybe half or maybe even a little bit more of the benefits of a thru hike without wrecking their life structure or their bodies, because to be honest, at the end of a 6-month thru hike, most people are in pretty rough shape physically and maybe a bit malnourished, etc. So in thinking about this, I ended up landing on 3 weeks. So I want to run y'all through, building up to that 3-week period, some benefits that I think somebody could gain from being out on a backpacking trip for 3 weeks. First, let's start with day hiking. I feel like so many people sell day hiking short. I see it all the time in the Homemade Wanderlust backpacking forum group on Facebook, where people will say, well, I haven't backpacked yet, I'm just a day hiker. But day hiking is an awesome way to get out, get some exercise, fresh air, etc. And it's the first step into making that transition into backpacking. And in fact, day hiking can even help with depression and probably anxiety too. There's a study that I'll link to in the video description below where a group of people who went out for a 90-minute period into nature to walk about showed a decrease in activity in a region of the brain that's linked with depression, as opposed to those who went for a 90-minute walkabout in a more urban setting with traffic going by, and they did not show the same reduction. Now, if the only way that you can get out and exercise is to walk around the block in your neighborhood with cars going by, that's still getting out and getting exercise, and in my opinion, better than just sitting on the couch. But if you can find a way to break off into nature, you'll find your mind being a bit more peaceful, and it can even help with depression, anxiety, etc. Now let's talk about that first overnight backpacking trip. This is really where I think people are able to wrap their mind around the possibility that, hey, I am actually capable of backpacking, and if I can do one night, why can't I possibly do more? And the way that this happens is you get a huge confidence boost from going on an overnight trip, from knowing that you planned this thing where you put hopefully everything that you need into a pack, you went out into the woods, and then you came back home alive. First of all, you were able to actually fit everything you need into a pack to live. And then second of all, you actually made it happen. And if things didn't go perfectly as planned, which oftentimes they don't, you were able to roll with the punches and make it work anyway. And then I think that a lot of adults don't realize how afraid of the dark they actually are until they're sleeping in a tent in the woods by themselves. Because at home, in your comfort zone where you control the atmosphere around you, might not be afraid of the dark. But in a tent, in the dark, in an area that you don't control in the wilderness, I mean, every caterpillar sounds like a grizzly bear outside of the tent. So just that whole experience, I think, can really open people's minds and make them realize, like, hey, I can do this, and it's rewarding, and if I can do it for one night, I can probably do it for more. Also, I think in as short of a period of time, of 1 to a few days, the reality of quiet time can really weigh on you, and it might help you see if you are super addicted to social media or your phone, or just not good at spending time alone. It can really show you your weaknesses in that area, because especially if you're in an area that doesn't have cell reception, or you put it in airplane mode and say, I'm just going to do this for myself and step away from everything, I think you'll find yourself reaching for your phone, or like, oh man, I wonder what everybody's doing on Facebook right now, or I wonder what my friends are doing, but I'm here stuck in this quiet time by myself. But that's a very good and healthy thing, and I think something that we should do more often. Now let's talk about the 1 week period, or whatever period it really takes for you to have to do a resupply. I don't like to carry more than 5 days of food. So in a week period, I would have already had one resupply if possible. But having to resupply, I think, really changes things, because now you're a stinky wild animal emerging from the woods, and you have to go back into civilization, and not just to your car, to your home where you can shower and get what you want to eat, but actually to a different place, a different town, where you have to rely on the kindness of others to get to town by putting your thumb out in the wind. For me, hitchhiking for the first time was a very humbling and really embarrassing experience, because I had never been on that side of things. I always had a friend that could give me a ride if I needed one, or my own vehicle. So to have to put myself out there to strangers really kind of turned the tables and put me on the other side of a situation that I had never been in, given I put myself in this situation. But still, it helped me see things possibly from other people's perspective. And in the future, you know, I thought to myself, maybe I'll be a little less judgmental or a bit more kind to strangers instead of assuming things about them. And just realizing this person is in a place where maybe they need some help. So, you know, I'm more likely in the future to give it to them after I've put myself in that situation. Also, once you go in town for a resupply, you realize how inconvenient not having transportation is, because you've got to go to a place and check in so you can bathe and sleep for the night, and maybe charge up your electronics if you've got a camera or phone, etc. But you also need to do laundry. So you have a choice, if the place that you're staying at doesn't have laundry, of doing what I call shower laundry and washing everything by hand there at the place you're staying, or you have to walk to a laundromat. But it's not even as simple as that, because you might have to get soap from a store or change from a store that's not near the laundromat or near the place that you're staying. So while you're taking a day off, you may have to do a lot of walking around the town to really get everything done that you need to do. So you really start to appreciate those little things at home, like a car or money for gas to put in the car to make life more convenient. Through navigating all of these logistics of leaving trail, going and doing all the things you need to do, and then returning to trail, I think, again, that you get a pretty big confidence boost in that. Almost every time I get back on trail after doing a resupply, I'm like, oh, okay, somehow I managed to make all of that happen, you know, and it worked this time. Hopefully it continues to work in the future. And I mean, it always does one way or another. But there's just kind of a rush to that. And again, I think you kind of pat yourself on the back for making it work, and also feel a good bit of gratitude for the people who were willing to help you and make it actually happen. Now let's talk about 2 weeks, because I think somewhere around the 2-week period, maybe going on into the third, the physical game starts to change. At this point, you have pushed through pain and suffering every day. I know, especially the first few days, I'd get out of the tent and just be like, oh my gosh, like, I'm just so sore, I'm suffering, I'm not used to this weight on my back or doing this many miles. And at this point, you've pushed through that, and you're starting to see some delayed gratification of keeping working at it, and you start to feel better. Maybe the miles are coming a little bit more easily, and I hesitate to use that word, because for me, the miles never feel easy. I just do them a little bit faster than I did before. But anyway, you're pushing through that, and if you do a shorter hike than that, typically it's kind of a sufferfest to some extent. So at this point, you finally get past that. But on the flip side of that, I feel like week 2 is where the mental game gets a little bit tougher and things start getting a little bit heavier mentally, because, you know, it's not as exciting as when you first start out. And at this point, some of the days might start to feel a little bit monotonous, or, you know, the same. You're really missing the comforts of home and being able to have food whenever you want it, and certain food whenever you want it. You're missing your bed, you know, maybe your friends, family, etc. Things just start to get a little bit tougher. And not only the missing of the things that you have back home, but by week 2, some of the thoughts from the past probably start surfacing. For myself, on the AT, once the newness of the idea kind of started to wear off, when I was alone and hiking, all of the things that I didn't want to think about started coming to mind first. Maybe past relationships or arguments I had, or things that I did in the past that I wasn't proud of. And I talked to Nimblewell Nomad about this while I was through hiking on the Pinhoti Trail when I met him at Flag Mountain. And he said, well, Dixie, you just started to realize what a jerk you really are. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, exactly, I did. I was just ashamed of myself in a lot of ways. And he says, of course, all of us that do long miles go through that. You have to realize what a jerk you are, accept it, and then love your jerk self anyway. So I think a lot of this can start happening by week 2 or however long it takes for the newness to wear off. Also by week 2, because you've had the physical stresses, you finally started to get past those, and now you're going through the mental stresses, somewhere between all of that physical and mental stuff, you're probably gonna have a toddler fit. But that's a good thing, because you're working through the idea that you can't control every situation. Sometimes it's gonna rain and the wind's gonna blow and your stuff's gonna get wet and your feet are gonna hurt, and then you'll stub your toe on a rock and just get really pissed off about it. But that's good, because I do think it's important for people to realize you can put a lot of anger into the situation, but it's not gonna change it. So maybe you're better suited to put your time, energy, and effort into things that you can change or that you can control, and maybe learn to just deal with some of that other stuff that you can't control or change. 3 weeks. I feel like at this point, most people tend to have worked through their physical ailments. I mean, you could still get an injury or something like that, but the typical aches and pains. Also, the mental side of things have probably calmed down a little bit, starting to get into the groove and really enjoy being in the here and now. And people have even said they feel at that point it becomes more of a meditative experience of going down the trail, and maybe you're not thinking of all of the bad things anymore, but having good thoughts and maybe even thinking about reprioritizing things in life or ways that you can improve your life when you get home. So things just kind of take a positive turn mentally and physically, I think, at this point. Also, at 3 weeks, I think people really start to fall in love with freedom, if that's something that they appreciate, because most people don't really have many freedoms in their lives. And I know you think, well, yes, I do, because I can pretty much go get whatever food whenever I want it or whatever products at the store. But the structure of many people's lives in general is the formula that's forced on us by society when we're little kids. You grow up, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, and you work until you retire or die. And that's pretty much the end of it. So being out on the trail for this long of a period of time and waking up when you want to, structuring your days how you want to. Oh, you decided that you want to take the afternoon off and sit and watch this waterfall? Go for it. At this point, there just seems to be a perspective shift where it's like, wow, I really like the taste of freedom, and maybe when I get back home, I'm gonna try to start incorporating more of that into my life, because the truth is, if we don't design our own lives, somebody else will do it for us. Also, at that 3 week mark, you'll probably start feeling a little bit more at one with nature, because you've observed the animals around you in your particular area. You've learned their patterns, you've learned their noises, you've started to maybe identify some of them or take pictures so you can identify them later. So you kind of get into a groove with your surroundings and realize that you're also an animal, just out in nature having a good old time. If you've been out backpacking for a 3 week period, then you'll have probably done several resupplies at that point and worked through the humiliation of stinking and not looking your best when you go into town. On the AT for a while, I kind of felt embarrassed if I would go out and have a drink on a Friday night at a resupply town, because I'd see all these girls fixed up with makeup on and hair to a T, looking like knockouts, and there I was in my grungy hiker clothes, probably with some residual stink to me, and it's just a little bit embarrassing, because it's like, well, what's wrong with this girl? Can she not afford better clothes, or does she not care about how she looks? But after going through several resupplies and experiencing that, I'm like, man, I'm out here having fun with all these other hiker people I've met, or maybe some locals if I didn't see any other fellow hikers in there. And I'm having just as much fun as these people that spent hours getting dressed and scrubbed up to go out. And now I'm not saying that there's anything shameful about wanting to look nice or putting on perfume to go out, but I'm just saying that it's not a prerequisite to enjoying your life and having fun. Now, if you've been hiking alone for this 3-week period, at first, if you're not a typical loner, it probably drove you crazy. But at 3 weeks, you're probably getting a bit more used to that and maybe even enjoying that alone time with yourself. But if you've been hiking with others, you've probably seen how quickly you can get attached to people you meet on trail and how you'll talk to them about your bathroom schedule, but maybe somebody that you've known several years, you won't even poot in front of them. So it's just crazy how things are so different on trail. And if you've been around other hikers, maybe you've run into some people that don't have the same beliefs as you, but you've realized, wow, we can actually coexist and still have fun hanging out around a campfire and talking about things like civilized adults instead of screaming and cussing at people on Facebook, because that's how people are influenced or perspectives are changed, is sitting down and having a meaningful conversation with somebody, not preaching on social media or screaming and yelling at people. And also, after a 3-week period, I think that you will find once you do get home to your wonderful bed and everything in your comfort zone, how much crap you have that you don't need, and you'll probably want to throw away a lot of things, because once you've gone that long with having everything that you need right there at your fingertips, you'll realize that everything else is just maybe a bit excessive. And finally, I think at that 3-week period, you might start to realize that you can be grateful for the little things and be grateful for what you have, because after having several resupplies where you just have to take what you can get instead of being able to fix up all these super awesome backpacking meals that you homemade or that you bought online or whatever, because when you go out for a 3 to 5 day period, or maybe even 1 week, you can take whatever you want from home. But when you're thrown out there and you just have to resupply at whatever store you can find, you learn to be appreciative for what you can get. So anyway, if you've never been backpacking for 3 weeks, then I challenge you to try to make time to go do that. And if you can't step aside for 3 weeks, a day hike, a few day hike, a week hike, 2-week hike, whatever you can get out and make happen for yourself, I think that you'll find when you come out of the woods, you'll be a better person physically, mentally. I mean, sure, you could hurt yourself or something along the way, or you might be sore, but I've never come out of the woods a worse person or in worse shape mentally, at least emotionally, spiritually, than when I went in. And even if things don't go as planned, again, those are learning experiences and growing experiences, and I think that all of that does make us better people. So if you have been backpacking for a 3-week period or less, or even more than that, I would love for you to share in the comments below some things that you noticed in yourself, and maybe that'll encourage other people to get out there and try it out for themselves. Thank y'all so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe before you go if you enjoyed today's video, and we will see y'all next time.